Well, we first got together.
The long or the short story?
Which one you want?
Let's tell him the medium story.
Okay, good plan.
We got together back in Arkansas 8 years ago, and Hannah had started a family band with her mom and dad and this family friend named Steve Smith. And Steve was the man who taught me to play guitar when I was a kid, and he was my confirmation mentor in church. And Steve's son went to college with Cheryl. And so I joined right after I finished college, and Cheryl came in a month or two later, and we played in Arkansas for a couple of years and made some contacts in Nashville through the Nashville Songwriters Association. That contact here in Nashville named Kai Fleming, she encouraged the three of us to move out to Nashville. And so we did that in 2007, and so we've been a trio since 2007, but we started originally with a family band in Arkansas.
I think some of the best advice we've gotten is just to enjoy the journey. I know Steve Smith, the guy that introduced us to each other, told us that when we first moved out, and we've tried to do that, and that's actually been reinforced by a lot of our idols. We were out with Reba last year, and that was something she told us. And
She told us that even before we knew we were going to go on tour with her. It was like the first time we met her, and it was in this huge crowd of people, and it was like we were the only people in the world. She shook our hands and looked us straight in the eye, and that's the first thing she said.
That's a good question. I mean, there's so many songs that we love we love all the songs, of course, on the record. But I think if I was going to choose one, I would choose Cherry Pie, just because it's a song that I wrote. Actually, we wrote it about Hannah. We got together and we wrote it, and we called her and asked her for just some tidbits on her story. But ultimately, what I really identify with in that song is the being grateful for the people that helped you get to where you are. And that feeling when you're singing a song and it's just rocking out and you're singing that feeling out loud, it really feels good.
It also feels good because you feel the audience connecting with that as well. I think it's, especially in country, I love that country people and country music listeners really value good hearts and appreciation. And so I love singing that song, especially not only because it's one of the most beautiful gifts I've ever been given, but because I feel like that it connects us with the audiences that we're singing with, and that's our most favorite thing to feel.
We love to play music with each other and for our fans, who are the greatest people in the world. And our album is
out.
We really want listeners to feel like they know who we are and they know where we came from and where we're headed when they have heard the CD. We each have pieces of ourselves on the record, musically and personally, and stories that we've lived. And like the song "Christ Alone," it's a big piece of who we are and where we came from. Our good friend Steve wrote that song.
And Cherry Pie.
Cherry Pie is a song that I wrote, but it's actually Hannah's story. And you can kind of see her life and how she grew up if you listen to that song. And really all of our music comes from that place of it's just who we are, and it's what we've experienced and what we love, and we love to have a good time. Hannah wrote a song called "Who Am I Drinking Tonight," and it's a clever little twist on getting to know a guy and through what he chooses to imbibe. So
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. But we like to have a good time, and we love to play music, and we love to have a lot of harmonies and acoustic instruments in our music. We call it country with roots.
We came up with the name Eden's Edge in a kind of an effortless way. We were needing to find a new band name, and they are so hard I mean, it is so hard to come up with something unique that nobody has that you feel like represents who you are in the music that you make. And so we were looking for a long time, and we had lists and lists and lists that we've made. And we were also back in Arkansas playing gigs and stuff. And we were driving on our way to the show, carpooling and having those little walkie-talkies like you do when you go to Florida for the yearly Florida beach trips. And we were driving through the Ozark Mountains, and we were all just playing this funny game where we were coming up with just stupid names, that we could possibly, I wish we could remember all the things we came up with, because some of them were ridiculous. And we were driving through the Ozark Mountains, and there's this one spot where the mountains open up and you can see the entire valley. And Steve got on the walkie-talkie and said, "You guys look out there. It looks like we're on the edge of Eden." And we were like, "Hey, that's pretty cool," because not only is that what music does for us, it's our passion, it's what, is, the closest that we can get to paradise, but that's what Arkansas is to us as well, because, if you've never been to Arkansas, it's kind of a hidden treasure in that it's just absolutely beautiful. There are parts of it that you can drive through that you can't believe are real, and we all grew up in that nature and really value that, so we were like, that's what we're doing. I want to still be playing music for a living, and I know that that's kind of a funny answer, but being able to do this every day is a huge privilege, and even at any stage it can go one direction or the other, and it's very much kind of a career choice that is kind of you're kind of always on your toes, I guess. So I hope that we get to do this for a really long time, because it's what I love most in the world, and I hope lots and lots of people get to hear our music, and that our music is seen as timeless pieces that they can put in 5-10 years from now, and that it takes them back and it's still relevant to today. And I hope that the world gets to hear what we're doing and they're inspired by it. I think that all three of us would agree that in writing a song, in order for it to be successful and be impactful, it's going to have to come from some real place, whether we've experienced it or not. Sometimes we've experienced it, and sometimes it's something that's inspired us. For example, I haven't exactly lived the story of Last Supper, the song that I was a part of writing, but I know what it's like to be a part of a really long-lasting relationship that is kind of you're looking at each other and you're facing your failures in a way, and what does that mean? And it's kind of that pivotal moment where you decide we're either going to go down one road or the other. And obviously I've never been through a divorce, but I've been a child of divorce, and that song is just kind of, one of the people that inspires me to do that is Patty Griffin. She's one of my heroes in her songwriting and her vocal ability, and just her as an artist, period. She writes songs that I know that she's probably lived, and then she'll write songs about a girl in a trapeze circus. It's like, obviously, she didn't live that. She'll write a song from a man's perspective sometimes, and I love that because, I'm interpreting the song and I'm communicating the song, and sometimes that means being an actress. And I love writing that way. And I also love interpreting other people's songs that way. But I also love writing songs where, I've lived it and I want to get it out, and it's that therapeutic thing, and I think all of us would say the same.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about all the stand-up moments that happened with us, especially with our first single. There was one that I really loved that Cheryl kind of shared with us at a show. We were
South Carolina, remember?
We're in South Carolina.
Oh yeah. With Amen.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I was thinking of Opry, of Reba. There's been a lot of moments. Opry debut, I always say that's a huge moment for us.
Gosh.
But we played so many shows with full band where you were in ears, so it really isolates your sound to hear just, your voices and your instruments. But we played a show at a club, and it was a little while after Amen had come out, and it was the first time we didn't have in-ears and was just acoustic, so we had just wedges and we could hear the crowd, and the room was packed. And it was the first time that people were singing every lyric of the song back to us, a whole mass of people. And it hit me really hard for some reason. I almost got choked up. I could hardly sing because it was just so moving. And, it's one thing to kind of see people's mouths moving, but to hear a room singing a song that you guys have, poured over and spent time arranging it and recording it, and to have people connect with it to a point that they know every lyric was really moving for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know all of us too. I just, it's one moment that I keep talking about.
I love that moment, and I loved that it happened. And I remember looking over at you during the show, and we were just both going, "Oh my gosh, like this is awesome."
You can't explain the moment. It's just it is what it is. But it's magical. I know that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Opry debut last year on March 5th. We debuted at the Grand Ole Opry, and Brad Paisley, who later took us on tour that summer, he came out and introduced us and said, "Hey guys, this is a new band that I'm taking on the road with me this summer, and I want you to check them out and really give them a listen." And that was amazing to have that, kind of, I guess, what's the word, a recommendation or whatever. But anyway, we went out there and played, and I really don't remember playing the first time at the Opry, because it was like, I mean, my heart was pounding. And
I guess that's kind of how people feel when they're like,
flew
I
by.
don't even remember my wedding, or I don't, like major events in your life are just it's so overwhelming, and it's so hard for your brain to take it all in because it means so much to you that it's like, I was trying just not to faint.
Trying to remember the words and what to play on the dobro.
Don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up.
But gosh, what an honor to get to be a part of that.
All three of us have influences, and a lot of them overlap, and that's the reason why a lot of us connect. But we all say, like, I guess what naturally makes up our sound, we didn't even think about it until people started asking us, like, how did you come up with your sound? We're going like, we might need to think about that a little bit, because we don't know. We just started playing together, and it became what it was. But I kind of grew up in a family kind of folk Americana band, and Cheryl grew up in the bluegrass world, hardcore, and then Dean had a bunch of rock bands as a kid and all growing up. So we kind of have that country music all throughout, all three of us, and that's kind of what connects us, is the country influences, and then have the other influences between the three of us. So I think all of us could name a lot of names on what is influential to us, Like, what are some of yours?
Like for me, Eric Clapton was a guitar player that I loved as a songwriter and a player, and then Jerry Douglas from Alison Krauss's band. He's an amazing dobro player, and he was my main influence in learning to pick up the dobro. And then Daryl Scott as a songwriter. He's somebody that we all three really, really respect.
Yeah.
Alison Krauss is definitely one of my biggest influences growing up. And then, Tony Rice as a guitarist, Adam Steffi as a mandolin player, Earl Scruggs as a banjo player. I think Dolly Parton as a songwriter and as a singer and an interpreter of songs. Mm-hmm. I could go on with my list, but those are definitely my main people.
For me as a female vocalist, I really do kind of, not even thinking about it, naturally tend to lend myself towards other female vocalists that inspire me. And I've kind of, like I said earlier, you have the blessing when people ask you those questions to kind of analyze why you make the decisions that you make. And so kind of what I've discovered is I really like unique character-filled voices, and I like voices that show emotion. And so I like to belt out those notes, and I like to kind of show a variety, but I really, at the end of the day, when you hear the song that we do in our instrumental ability and in our vocal ability, we hope that you feel the emotion of the song and that you feel like we've communicated that to you. So some of my favorite vocalists that do that are Mindy Smith, Natalie Grant is amazing with that, Dolly Parton, Natalie Maines, oh my gosh, a huge fan of her, Patty Griffin, obsessed with her. I mean, I have like probably 15 and 20 I couldn't name like my top favorites, because that's kind of the main group for me. But Alison Krauss is a huge one. Nancy Griffith is huge. All of us could go on and on.